Good afternoon. My name is Alan McCoy. I am Director of Startup Support at the University of Maryland's Young Ventures. And I would like to extend a warm welcome to everyone who joined us today for the next installment of the Startup Fundamentals Workshop Series. This series is offered by Young Ventures in collaboration with the Dingman Center for Entrepreneurship at the Smith School of Business and Maryland Technology Enterprise Institute at the Clark School of Engineering. Those attending live session are encouraged to submit questions via the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We are recording this session. It will be posted on our Startup UMD YouTube channel, so you have an option to submit your questions anonymously if you wish to do so. Today, we will focus on a very interesting subsection of entrepreneurship, franchising. Franchising offers an opportunity to start and operate a business according to an already established recipe for success, including a business model, distribution system, and many other built-in things, allowing you to run a small business, yet being able to take advantage of the economies of scale. The world of franchises could be confusing, so today we have a great panel of experts ranging from franchise broker, attorney, real estate developer, and some real-life franchise operators. I'm very pleased to welcome our speakers. And here's a very, very brief introduction, since they will talk more about their background during their talk. We have Mr. Hallie Williams. He's a founder and CEO of Right Next Door, a franchise brokerage firm with more than 20 years of experience in economic and community development. Mr. Williams is responsible for reaching out to me and proposing this session and then assembling the panel of experts. So thank you so much for that. Ms. Sonia Williams, a managing partner with J.S. Greenleaf Partnerships, LLC. Mr. Chris Johnson, he's a franchisee of Fish Window Cleaning of Fairfax, Virginia, among other accolades. Mr. Sean Showers, franchisee, Mr. Electric of Montgomery County. And Mr. Carlos White, a franchise attorney with Lathrop JMP. So again, thank you so much for participating in today's session and sharing your knowledge with us. I will turn off my mic and stop my video. And Hallie, the mic is all yours. Feel free to take from here. And everybody else, please submit your questions via the Q&A and we will monitor those questions throughout the session.
Not complaining. Hey, thanks a lot, Ala. So let me share my screen here. Give me the thumbs up if you guys see it.
Yeah, we see it.
As Ala was sharing today, the chat is disabled, but we do have the Q&A. So as you guys start to think about your questions as you hear during the discussion today, and it's open discussion, feel free as you hear different things or things that you have concerns about or questions that you brought to the workshop today, definitely start filling up the Q&A with those. And as we go through the workshop today, we'll address some of your questions. All right. Once again, my name is Hallie Williams. And if you can, as you guys are logging on, hit the QR code, either screenshot or if you can scan the QR code, do a check-in so I can get your information. We can share our additional information after the session. So I'm a Terp for life. My family is, I graduated from the engineering school, my wife from the education school, and my son from the computer science. So we definitely a Terp for life family. Wasn't able to get my youngest to the University of Maryland. I guess I brought them on campus too much, as they were growing up. But also a certified franchise consultant, loan broker. And so you're here today about things that I do to help entrepreneurs. And the assumption is today that everybody's on the call as an entrepreneur. You're at different stages of your entrepreneurial journey, ideation. Some of you guys are all small business owners. Some of you guys are thinking about acquiring a franchise. So the assumption is that everybody is on their entrepreneurial journey today, and we'll present it as such. All right. Today in the world, is changing ways that now require everyone to think like an entrepreneur. As we all know, there are a lot of different variables that's in the market right now. A lot of baby boomers are retiring, especially those who made it through the pandemic. They had enough. They've made it through, and they're looking to either sell their business or just head off to Florida. A lot of mid-level professionals are looking for other opportunities of pursuing their passion. And there's also a lot of turbulence in the market. And so whether you're inside of corporate America as an entrepreneur, developing products or services, or if you're an entrepreneur who had a side hustle, it requires us all to think about problems, opportunities, and needs in the market, and then identify solutions and goals to achieve those. And so that's one of the good thing that Ala and team at UMD Startups do. Whether you're a faculty or staff or students on campus or alumni, they help you along in your entrepreneur journey with technical skills. And so what we want to do today is, no matter where you are, we want you to explore franchising as an option when you think about your entrepreneur journey. All right. And so when we talk about franchising, most entrepreneurs, when you think about, they always think, what exactly you think about restaurants? But I wanted to recenter and recalibrate a lot of folks when they start to think about what is franchising. For entrepreneurs, your first step is usually coming up with your business story. What is a problem, opportunity, or need you see in a market? Then you start to develop a strategy of how you want to address that product, service, or need in the market with, solutions and goals. Once you formulate that story, you start to develop your business structure, B2B, B2C. You set up your business models. And so then you started to implement your systems in place to execute on that product service that you want to offer. And then you start to standardize the systems. And so the business starts to grow. You stand it up, the business starts to grow. And so the question becomes then, how do you scale? Do you scale by, going to VCs, venture capitalists, private equity firms, or external sources for funding to then create multiple units around the company, around the country? Or do you look internally and say, hey, should I recruit entrepreneurs to help me grow my business? And so that's what franchising is. It's a business strategy that helps you to scale. And so I always say that the different types of entrepreneurs, there's those that come up with ideas, those who fund ideas, and those who execute on others' ideas. So those are the three different paths to entrepreneurship. So here's a sample of some of the different franchises that we have in our portfolio here right next door. As you guys know about, especially if you went to Maryland, you know about Zips or Pisano's Pizza, but also in the Union, we have Salad Works, and here are other brands that we have in the portfolio. All right. So the one thing I always try to level set with folks when they talk about franchises, be clear on the terminology. I can't tell you how many times I spoke to people at expos or workshops, and they say, hey, I want to be a franchisor. I want to own a McDonald's. I'm like, no, you got to be clear on the terminology. And so that's what we're trying to do today is make sure you're clear and you feel comfortable with the language when it comes to franchising as a business strategy. So franchising is, like I shared, is the actual strategy to grow and to scale a business. And when you talk about what are franchises, what type of businesses identify as franchises, is businesses where they share the logo, the licensing. They also allow you to execute on their business system. It's a proven business concept. So they have to be in the black. They have to show a proven revenue. It's also revenue sharing, you with the franchisor, the franchisee. And more importantly, they have an ideal customer they like to target. And so I always share with people, my engineering background, I learned about product development. Think about how you bring a product or service to market. But when franchising, you have to think about customer development. How do you develop those customers? Where are those customers? What do your community need? Or whether it be services or different amenities in the community, that's what franchising allow you to do. So that's key terms are franchising and franchise, the business entity. All right. Next up are the roles in the franchising industry. The franchisor, I want you to think about that original entrepreneur. So you talk about McDonald's, you talk about the McDonald brothers, Dick and Mac. Those are the guys who came up with the idea for McDonald's. All right. Franchisee are the entrepreneurs that those original entrepreneurs recruit to execute on their business model. And so that's very important that you align, and when you're recruiting entrepreneurs to execute your business model, they have to align with the vision, the values, and mission of what those original entrepreneurs had in mind. Other players in the market are franchise attorneys. And so I tell any entrepreneur, as soon as you start to think about owning and operating a business or building a business, you need to contact and get in your portfolio, your ecosystem, a reference to either an attorney or a legal service to help you out with that journey. And then you have other players in the entrepreneurial franchise ecosystems, myself as a franchise broker who help present different brands to you. So those are the different players that you'll see in this franchising space. So as I shared earlier, if you have any questions or comments, definitely put it in the Q&A section. All right. Next up, as you think about franchising, you talk about the different types of documentation. One is always, once you've identified what brand you're interested in, you fill out a franchise application and you get access to what's called a franchise disclosure document. And so the franchise disclosure document is just as you will buy a stock or a bond you receive with prospectus. A franchise disclosure document is that document. And we'll show you here in a second. All the sections consists of 23 sections, and it's mandated by the Federal Trade Commission that all franchise brands present this to candidates, so you'll know exactly the scope of the business and what's your expectations and obligations as a franchise candidate. Once you've reviewed that FDD, and I always recommend you get a franchise attorney. Don't just get an attorney. Get a franchise attorney, someone who understands and has experience in the industry, help you to review and be clear on what things are negotiable and what things are not negotiable. You'll then sign a franchise agreement. You think that, hey, this is the business opportunity that either me as a solopreneur, or if you have other investors and partners, hey, this is what we agree on. This is what we want to move forward with. Then you sign that franchise agreement, and then you get the keys to the business. You're now the owner operator of that franchise. That's the franchise agreement. All right. Here's at a high level. Take a screenshot, or as we share this webinar will be on recording. This is the franchise disclosure document sections. And so the key items that I highlighted is everybody wants to know how much does it cost? What are those initial investment dollars to own and operate a franchise? That's what you'll see here in item 5, the initial franchise fees and other fees associated, as well as the estimated initial investment, all in expense to get that business up and running. The beauty of franchising, purchasing that model, that's the focus. It allows you to purchase a business and to get that business up and running as soon as possible to stabilize it so you can start making money and get into the black. All right. Item 9 and item 15 highlights obligations. You as a new entrepreneur owning that business, what are your obligations as a franchise owner? And then to be clear on what are the you as a franchisee, and then a franchisor, what are obligations to you? As far as providing you that ongoing support, that coaching to help you get that business up and running, helping you identify the ideal territory, a location, as well as sharing out best practice with other franchise owners have in that system. And then more importantly, the item 19, which is unit economics. So you get an opportunity to see how other franchise businesses are performing. So if you're in the DC area, you can see how your peers in New York or Atlanta or Charlotte, how those other business owners are performing. And so the beauty of this FDD to receive it early in the process is that you get opportunity to call and get to talk to some of those franchise owners to see what their experience was like, before you actually sign that franchise agreement. So that's something that I always recommend that candidates do as they think about franchising as a business opportunity. All right. Any questions in the Q&A? All right. Next up are what I call the milestones in franchising.
Hallie, there were a few questions in the Q&A, but I answered them.
Okay, cool, good stuff. All right. The milestones in this franchise journey is that once you start selecting, hey, these are the different types of business I'm interested in, whether it be a location-based business, a home-based business, a web-based business, or even a mobile business, because the different types of business models, you'll then go to the headquarters and meet the franchisor, what we call the discovery day. Some people call it disclosure day. During this discovery day, you as a franchise candidate, you get to go to headquarters and meet the C-suite, meet the CEO to understand, hey, what are the vision and values and mission of the business? You'll meet the chief operating officer to really talk about what is the vision, what do you see this business going, what other products and service offerings do you see us providing the market? You meet the chief marketing officer, the growth officer, the technology systems, CTOs, to really see what systems are in place so you can make sure this business is sustainable when you bring it back to your territory, your community. So that's Discovery Day. And as I shared today, we have 2 live case studies with franchise owners. You ask questions, ask them what was their experience like during their Discovery Day. Once you work with your team, whether you're a solopreneur or you have other investors, then it comes to that decision day. And that franchise decision day is when you've done your due diligence. And we say due diligence, that means your validations. You've done the business validations to make sure that business aligned with your values and what you see as your business strategy execution. Then also the financial validations. The unit economics look good. You have the resources and liquidity to sustain this business. And then the systems validations, the management systems, the financial systems, technology systems are in place. And so you feel comfortable with those, and you make the decision whether you want to move forward with purchasing this business. So those are the key milestones. The Discovery Day, when you go visit the headquarters and meet the C-suite, and then decision day when you have to make that decision, sign that franchise agreement to actually acquire that business. All right, real quick, go through the different types of franchises. All right, at a high level, we talk about product distribution type of franchise, and so when you think of those, think of like a gas company, think about bottling company, think about a car dealership where they sell one single product or offering, and that's what they do. There's more the traditional type of franchising. And then you have this business format, and that's what you usually see, especially in the suburbs and in communities, whether it's restaurants or home services, is the business format. When you actually buy the entire system, the product distribution allows you a little bit more flexibility to how you execute. But when you purchase a business format franchise, you have to follow the operating procedures and systems that are in place. And those who prove to be most successful and to stabilize those businesses most quickly are those who actually follow the systems. I always joke that franchise is not for mavericks. So if you're a maverick, you don't follow rules, and you should probably stick with being an independent business owner. Whereas if you're comfortable with executing on a system, franchising, especially the business format, franchising model is for you. All right. Next is just high level of the different types of business industries. You see there we have the lean model canvas, different types of industries. So a lot of people automatically just think of restaurants, but franchising is a very diverse industry. And so, and the beauty of it is I share with clients all the time is that just because you worked in one domain doesn't mean you have to find a franchise in that same domain. You have core competencies, capabilities, and skills that's transferable. And so keep that in mind as you start your franchise selection and discovery process. All right. So here we talk about the different types of franchise arrangements. So this is where I share with people. Here, think about the different investors, whether you want to be a solopreneur or you want to include other family members or partners. Here's where you have the flexibility in franchising. Not only if this is your first time purchasing a business, but if you're a small business owner and you want to buy another business to execute on, either to generate new revenue streams or to add on to your existing business, franchising is an excellent tool to do that. So if you're interested in like a single unit, that's just one unit franchise. Then you have the ability and flexibility to buy multiple units. And we talk about units, it can be divided up in territories. It can be a location, physical location territory. It can be a territory by zip codes, a collective number of zip codes, or cities. So those are even different business models have different ways that they divide up the territories. And so when we talk about multiple units, that's where a multiple unit comes in, territory franchise. And then individuals, entrepreneurs who want to get in more of the higher financial play, that's where the area developer come in at, where you're now purchasing an area which consists of multiple territories. And so that's a higher financial play that a lot of my clients and investors want to get into. And then, as I mentioned earlier, with the example of McDonald's, with McDonald brothers being those original entrepreneurs, Ray Kroc saw their vision and executed on their vision to expand McDonald's around the country. So that's what the master franchise agreement is. It allows you to work with those franchisors to expand and scale and grow their business on their behalf. So those are the different financial plays that entrepreneurs can get into when they think about a franchise. All right, good stuff. So here's the most important part what people all ask about, the financing. How do I finance my franchise? And I tell people, when you think about finance, think about your capital stack. There's so many options available to you. But as you know, with any financing, traditional commercial banks usually hear the 3 C's. People throw out 3 C's, 5 C's. And so when they talk about those, talk about either you have access to collateral, you have to have good credit, or you have cash flow. So think of those 3 C's as you start thinking about, how do I go about financing my business? More importantly, do you think of investing in this business as a solopreneur, or do you want to include other investors and partners? So those are things to think about early on as you start to build out your franchising strategy. And so when we talk about 2 types of financing, either debt financing or equity finance. And definitely, if you have any questions, fill in. We'll go into a little bit more detail either now or as we go through the session. First, financing, when you go to a bank, Bank of America, Chase, and they're usually going to require those 3: good credit, cash flow, and collateral. Another flexible option is SBA financing. And so with SBA, financing allows you they have different loan products. 7A allows you to acquire the business, provide you with some working capital. The 504, which is very popular, especially in DC area. Mayor Bowser has really been pushing this, where it allows you not only to buy the business, but allows you to buy the property that the business is on. So that's the SBA 504. And then they have different versions of the 7A, which is express loan. And that allows you to buy a business with 150,000, 250,000, those type of increments. And then the dream loan is everything above 350 to 500,000 to $1 million. So those are the SBA dream loans allow you to buy a business. So think of that when you want to buy multiple territories, or you think about it as an option. And then the M5 are the veteran version of the SBA loan. So the SBA loan products. And so last week in DC area, we had the FinTech conference. And so alternative lenders, just financial technology firms. Those are entrepreneurs who are in the funding idea business. And so a lot of these FinTech firms have specialty areas that they focus on. And so those are another funding option that's available to you. The next one, I tell people, if you're interested in bringing in family and friends, please include your attorney as early in the process as possible, so you can be clear on the loan amount and the terms of when you'll pay back those loans. But that is an option, including family and friends into your strategy, as well as credit cards through vendors and commercial credit loans. So those are different options that are available to you. But when you think about debt financing, think about loan amounts and think about terms. Whereas with equity financing, you don't have to pay that back, but you're getting an equity stake in the business. And so options there is you decide to personally finance your business, which a lot of folks have been able to do by having a brokerage account and then doing loans against their securities, or leveraging their retirement to then create an S corporation. So that's another vehicle to fund, and you become 100% owner equity stake in your business. So those are another financial vehicles you can explore. And whether you're in private entity, 401k, or government entity, TSP, you can use that as a funding source to acquire the business and to buy different resources that are needed to get that business up and running. And then other options which you see, especially if you've attended some of these startup entrepreneur work sessions, crowdfunding is very popular, especially for people who have new ideas and concepts they want to bring to market, to include other investors in early, as well as grants and gifts. And those are usually ones that you see through accelerator programs, where they're helping entrepreneurs acquire those technical skills to learn how to run a business, especially those who are going from what I call a side hustle to actually formalizing an entrepreneurial venture. So grants and gifts are available. Remember, with grants and gifts, you have to understand what the rubric is to achieve that grant. And then those are one-time, not sustainable funding sources. So keep those in mind. The next is what I call the investors. And then you have angel investors, venture capitalists, and private equity investors. They do play in the franchising space. You have a lot of angel investors who just want to do good in the community. I always tell people you can do good and receive funds by doing good. And so you have those who are interested in certain amenities or resources in communities, who will work with entrepreneurs if they're interested in, or they meet the criteria. But with angel investor VCs, you really have to sell yourself, sell your resume in order for them to entertain funding your business idea concept. I just want to pause there, because financing franchising always seems to be a heavy topic that people always ask about. So any questions come across there?
I don't see any other questions in the Q&A than what Chris already answered.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, there was one question about financing, but I answered a few of the questions, but I think this should clear up the question for that person.
Okay, cool, good stuff. All right. So remember, debt financing, term, schedule, you have to pay back. Equity financing, when you're giving up a stake in the business. All right. Real high level, as pros and cons, as I share with you today, we have a real live case study. We have franchise owners that want to share their franchise journey. So high level advantages: when you're in franchising, you're a partner with the actual original entrepreneur who came with the idea concept. So it's very common to meet the founders, for the founders to share their experience and how they came about their idea concept. So you're in business for yourself, where you're now the owner of your business, your territory, but you're not by yourself. You have resources available to support you. You're working with established product or service with brand recognition. So as soon as you sign that franchise agreement, you're getting a seat on your local chamber of commerce. So that's always good, you know, especially to be able to influence the amenities and services offered in your community. Your independence as an operating the business is on you, and so it allows you the ability to leverage some of your professional skills, and that's transferable from other domains that you've worked in. And you increase your chance of success because you get that wraparound support, especially when you're trying to stabilize that business, because the ultimate goal is for you to sustain that business in your community. All right. And some of the challenges, I mean, with just you giving up independence because you're now having to execute on an operating system, restrictions in that product or service offering. So that's why it's important you to include your franchise attorney in early to know what kind of flexibility you have, what you can and can't do within that business. And then it's on you, your job as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, to understand what are your obligations as a franchisee, and then what are your expectations of that franchisor to make sure your business is supported. All right. Real quick, I know we had some people come in a little late before I transition. Once again, hit the QR code, either screenshot it if you're using your cell phone, or you can just scan it. So want to make sure we can keep in touch with you if you have additional questions or different ideas for programming related to franchise, and put that in the Q&A also. As I shared, this is a one-on-one high level, but we can dig deep on each one of these topics as we forecast planning for 2024. So let us know what topics you want us to drill down a little deeper on in franchise. All right. Next up, I want to include Sean and Chris, who are franchise owners with Fish Window Cleaning and Mr. Electric, so they can share on their franchise journey and things they did prior to acquiring these businesses and what their journey has been like since they've been a franchise owner. So first up, I'll start with you, Chris, and then we'll include Sean.
Okay, cool. So my name is Chris Johnson. I'm franchisee with Fish Window Cleaning out of Fairfax, Virginia. I cover Northern Virginia. I am a graduate of the University of Maryland. As Hallie pointed out, when you look at it from the standpoint of transferable skills, I was not a business major at University of Maryland. I was a computer science major. I graduated with a computer science degree, got an advanced computer science degree, was working in the IT world for probably about 30 years, and retired from that world and moved into franchising with Fish Window Cleaning. There is really not much of IT that deals with Fish Window Cleaning, other than the fact that I have a computer system that allows me to run my business. Okay. As Hallie pointed out, when you look at it from the standpoint of transferable skills, it really boils down to, you know, I grew as a manager and a senior manager and a director into an executive level in the IT world. And I took all of that management and leadership, and I was also in the sales organization, took that sales knowledge and brought that into this particular role, right? As Hallie pointed out, you are actually coming into an agreement with a franchisor. So my franchisor is Fish Window Cleaning. It is the #1 window cleaning company across the United States, over 300 locations across the U.S. My franchisee covers Northern Virginia. So I have a patch in Northern Virginia. As Hallie pointed out about being multi-unit, I actually have 2 units in that cover all of Northern Virginia. When you come on board, so you're going to pay a royalty back to your franchisor, and the royalty is one for getting the brand. And so one of the nice things about getting the brand is you're starting a business, and right off the bat, you have brand recognition within the patch that you come into, right? People that may have been in California or Texas or whatever, they see our vehicles riding around, Fish Window Cleaning. They right away say, hey, we used you down in Texas. Can we use you here at our location here in Northern Virginia? So immediately you start getting customers from that. Your franchisor may have tools that may push business to you. So that's a good thing, because obviously if you're in business, you want your business to grow, right? So that helps you out as well. As Hallie pointed out, also, when you're starting a business, you have to put certain systems in place in order for you to be able to operate and be able to be successful. One of the nice things about the franchise model is that many of those systems come as a package deal to you. And now you can leverage those systems, you can leverage those techniques, strategies, processes in order to help get your business up and running and moving much more quickly and efficiently, and getting to the point where you're actually bringing in money, as opposed to trying to reinvent the wheel with some of your other practices. So that's kind of the big thing about franchising that will help you out. Now, as I pointed out, you are paying a franchisor fee, right? And so, there's nothing for free, right? So as you pay that franchisor fee, that's where you get access to the tools, the systems, all of that type of stuff. So in my case, there's a whole web portal that manages all of my business, does everything inside that business. And so that is of value to me, because now I don't have to manually create it from the standpoint of paperwork and creating a new system, creating a new website, all of that type of stuff. That's of value to me. Okay. So that's kind of essentially what the franchise model is about. Hallie, I don't know if there's any other points that you want.
I would say just touch on the partnerships with other franchise owners, because I see questions are coming out asking about that.
Oh, yeah. So Hallie had pointed out, when you're doing the discovery process, you get information from the franchisor about what the business is like. You want to do your own due diligence to make sure that, one, it's something that you feel either passionate about or aligns with what you want to do. Okay, perfect example in my case. I was doing all high tech, right? There's nothing that's high tech in this space, right? But the business model and the transferable skills that I was able to bring into this aligned with something that I could make money on. The other thing too is, when you're going through your discovery process, that is, you get the opportunity to speak to other business owners, other franchisees, and you want to be able to ask those questions to understand, what was it like from you? What was your background? How did you transition into this? The items that I've heard from the company on, the processes, the systems, all of that, how does that align with what your experience is, right? What do you find as the biggest benefits for what you're doing? And what do you find as the biggest challenges for what you're doing? Because you want to be able to understand those challenges as well, because you need to make sure that those challenges are something that you feel comfortable that you can address, okay? And now that I'm in, and I've been in for almost 4 years now, I do have relationships with other franchisees, both within my area, right, as well as franchisees across the country, to be able to bounce ideas and strategies and see if things that maybe they're doing that maybe I could do, and then vice versa. Some of them ping me on the standpoint of, hey, I understand that you're doing X, Y, Z. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're doing there, right? So it's always good to stay in contact with your fellow franchisees, just like you would have at any other job. You're staying in contact with your coworkers and learning and sharing from there.
No, good stuff. No, good stuff, Chris. Appreciate it. And as you guys are doing, continue to put those questions in the chats. We'll continue to answer them. So next up, Sean, you want to share about your franchise journey, how you pivoted from corporate to entrepreneur, and what that experience has been like?
Sure. So I'll give you a little bit of history about me as well. I'm not a Terp, but Hallie did say that he would adopt me for the purposes of this call. But I went to Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. Graduated back in 1998. Been in the franchising world for about 25 years now. Work in the hotel industry. My degree was in economics. So worked for a franchise or for about 6 years, and then I've been on the franchisee space for the past 12, 13 years. So I know both sides of the coin from that perspective. Right now, I'm a VP of Design and Construction, so I've been able to use all that I've learned as a franchisee and franchisor, and my role as a VP of Design and Construction to really leverage kind of where we are right now. I started this journey with my husband last year because I was like, I don't want to work, in this space forever. It's stressful. I need to do something where I need to be a little bit more in control of my destiny. That's kind of how I started this process. And a buddy of mine started a franchise, and he's in Texas. Did a kids franchise, martial arts franchise, and that's kind of where I started. Talked to him and talked to the franchise folks over there. And I was like, this probably won't really fit in where we live here in Bethesda and Silver Spring. So a good friend of mine, who's Hallie's sister, actually told me, he's like, hey, you know what? My brother does exactly what you're looking for. So I connected with Hallie. We started chatting. Again, this was maybe November of last year. Started chatting about kind of some other options out there. We looked at pet stores. We looked at labs like LabCorp and all those kinds of organizations. Then Hallie kept pushing. He's like, have you ever heard about home services? I was like, no, not really my thing, because we don't have experience in kind of what we're doing right now. And we talked about it. He's like, you don't need the experience. That's what a franchise is for. They show you what you need to do. Sometimes it's better for being a business person, not being an actual, the person with the trade, to help grow the business. Sometimes that's to your advantage. So I was like, okay, we looked at it, talked to a few folks at Mr. Electric. Mr. Electric is part of a conglomerate called Neighborly. They've got about, I think, maybe 24 different brands under the Neighborly foundation. And a lot of those, they've got Mr. Electric, Mr. Rotor, Mr. HVAC, Air Shield, a whole bunch of different types of home service focused franchises. And we like this one because ultimately, we just like the numbers based on the conversations that we're having with Hallie. And then when we started talking to the folks over at Neighborly, we like the numbers, what they were talking about in terms of, what typical franchise owners make in the first, 1 or 2 years as they're ramping up. We're like, okay, this is something that we can do. And so based on, just my background and thinking that I knew it all about franchising, I was like, oh yeah, I can do this. But once you get into the process, that was not the case. It's like, when you learn a lot more about, what you didn't know, your HR, your funding, your, web person, you do everything. Wear a whole bunch of different hats. The good thing about this franchise is they show you what to do and how to do it. It's just really up to you to really take all of those resources and really make the business work for you. We are now in week 2 of opening. We opened last week. After all of the, stuff we had to do to get on board. And we had to go down to Waco, Texas, and we had to go through business week. And we met with a bunch of different owners who are in the same journey and process that we are, and went through, how to talk to customers, what to do, what does your customer look like? How do you need to be online? What leverage you need to pull to be, to get your online presence kind of robust in order to get the calls and the customers. And that's what we're in the process of doing right now. When we started out as Mr. Electric of Montgomery County. Oh, I'm sorry, North Maryland rather, because we thought that was just the best way to go with this. And this was before we had conversations with Mr. Electric and Neighborly. And they said, well, yeah, it's probably a better idea for you to change your name to Mr. Electric of Bethesda, because the name has more cachet. It's a big hub in Montgomery County. So we had to change our name. And changing our name, we had to go through bank processes. I mean, just everything. It's not just a simple process. And I wish I'd known that before, but next time we'll know what to do better. It's really better to follow the process. And when you do, you don't run into those hiccups that can, set you back a couple of weeks. And you can keep your business on the right track. So week 2, my husband quit his job last week. He is now full-time Mr. Electric running the business. I'm going to have to stay working because, we're funding this by ourselves. We didn't get an SBA loan or We had some investments that we were able to leverage and convert that into the funds to fund the business. So we'll continue to do this in this format until it gets to a point where I can step away from my job and do this full time as well. That's the ultimate plan. That's working for myself and working and creating our own culture is something that I've always wanted to do. Working for the past 25 years, I've come across a bunch of different cultures. I know what works best for me, and I'd like to have that be the rest of my life versus working for somebody else. So that's pretty much the main reason as to why we wanted to go this route and have a I call it the sunset part of my life, more focusing on my brand, my company, versus focusing on making money for somebody else.
No, good stuff, Sean. And real quickly about the coaching, how's that been coming along? They dedicate you.
Are you talking about yourself, Hallie? You want to give you a plug?
No. I'm talking about inside the Mr. Electric brand.
I'll give you my two. I'll give you my two components of coaching. So with Hallie, and again, I saw a couple of questions about how we get into it. Hallie's been a great coach. I mean, he was very, very instrumental in guiding us to kind of where we needed to go, providing a lot of intel on just where the opportunities were. We would talk on a weekly basis in terms of kind of where you are, what have you done. This is before we started having conversations with Mr. Electric. So again, a great resource to use. I would say anybody should always have a franchise coach or broker to kind of help you in the initial parts of the process. As we've been in, we do have coaching sessions every week with the franchise owners. We have these cohorts every week where we get together, talk about some of the issues that we're having as owners. And the one that I'm in, we all started the process at the same time. But with this organization, everybody has been so generous with their knowledge. The folks who are old, the folks who are new, because everybody wants you to succeed. So it's been a pleasure working with this organization because everybody wants you to be a success story. So all the resources that they have, all of the experiences they've had in the past, it's all been very beneficial to us because again, we're brand new. We're not electricians. We know nothing about electricity. They're telling us kind of where to go, how to do it. And so it's been a great asset working with the franchise organization because they've been providing a huge amount of support to keep us going.
Good stuff. Hey, good share out, Sean. It's good stuff. Real quick, I want to pivot now. I want to bring in Carlos, our franchise attorney. And as you guys, as I mentioned earlier, when you get that copy of that FDD, and we go to full-blown Q&A, Sean and Chris can tell you what was that experience like getting that FDD for the first time, having to really go through it, and work with your franchise attorney to dissect some of the obligations. So I'm going to now let Carlos share out some of the things that he would like for entrepreneurs to do to prepare for that. And not only the FDD, but, the negotiations and other things that are involved when you're looking at this franchise agreement. So Carlos, is all yours.
I appreciate it, Haley. You gave some great points initially about the framework with respect to franchising. To me, the most powerful thing with respect to franchising is probably the only business model that provides transparency in the sense of what other opportunity where you would get a disclosure document that kind of gives you all the material information that you would need in order to make a decision. When you buy stocks, you might get a private offering or a 10K, but it doesn't help you with respect to the operations about what you're going to do and things along those lines. So that's a very powerful tool to have, in the fact that under the law, you have 14 days to decide. So you cannot be pressured into someone disclosing the document to you and signing immediately. You have 14 days in order to review, put together your team in order so that you're in the position to make the best decision as you move forward. Because one of the things is, from a franchise attorney perspective, my first questions always be franchisor, these franchise disclosure documents, because I crafted a lot of them, so I represent a lot of franchisors. Of course, they're for franchisor specific and more, written toward the franchisor's benefit. So if someone's looking for buying a franchise, it's so important to know, what jurisdiction are they located? Why is that important? Because you got extra statutory rights that you might not have in certain jurisdictions. Like in Texas, there's no specific rights, additional statutory rights. But guess what? In Maryland and Virginia, there is. And as a matter of fact, in Virginia, the franchisor just can't say we can't negotiate. I don't care what size the franchisor is. So that you have these additional franchise rights. Why is that important? Because it helps protect your investment, right? It makes it more difficult for them to terminate. It makes it more difficult for them to not allow you to exit. So it's so important to kind of get a feel for what jurisdiction you're located and if you got additional statutory rights. And if you do, then that kind of dictates what other terms that will need to be negotiated with respect to this franchise offering. The other thing Hallie mentioned earlier was with respect to financing. Guess what? The franchise agreement is very broad. So you have to have a feel for what type of financing that you're going to have up front. Otherwise, you'll be out of compliance with the franchise agreement. So if you need to raise capital or you're going to have other business owners that's going to be a partners that's associated with this, you need to have that up front so that you can have your operating agreement, which must be disclosed to the franchisor, and you can't basically sell any equity, or they can't sell any equity without the franchisor's approval, which that could be $10,000 if it's considered a transfer. So those are the types of blocking and tackling, why it's so important to have a franchise attorney associated with you. So once you have the review, you start getting the feel for how do you go about structuring your company, because depending on who's the owner, that's going to dictate who has to sign guarantees and things of that nature. Also with respect to financing. Also regarding, depending, the next question, is this a retail-based franchise where I would need a lease agreement, or is a non-retail-based arrangement? Because if it's retail-based, then guess what? You have to make sure that you have a lease agreement that aligns with the franchise agreement, because you don't want to be in a position where the lease agreement is not in reliance on that franchise agreement, as well as having business terms to help you extract the most value associated with your franchise. So just do not, sign lease agreements as is. Please negotiate and review that and make sure it aligns with respect to your franchise agreement and things along those lines. Also, your startup documents, like the franchisor will basically teach you how to operate, which is amazing how they can really, and it's been proven, they can really teach you how to operate a business successfully for 8 to 12 weeks. But the training doesn't touch upon all other things. Like it doesn't touch upon capital raising. It doesn't touch about, how you go about negotiating the lease to best protect you moving forward. So that's why it's so important to have that the agreement look with the franchise attorney, because why you have to build out an infrastructure team-wise. It's like your employees. You want to make sure that to the extent possible, you can give employee contracts, but it may be at will. You want to be able to make sure that you can terminate as easily as possible so that you can operate more efficiently. And if you don't have documentation or a strategy regarding that, that can be a huge issue as you continue to move forward, moving on. And of course, most franchisors require a non-compete, but with respect to a certain business. But you know what? It's important to take a look at that, because that non-compete does not restrict you from operating other businesses that are not similar to that. So therefore, that's another revenue stream. I can become a franchisee over here. Then I can also be a franchise over here, or I can develop my own business that's not in conflict. So it's so important to get the objectives of the owner so that they can understand, so they can fully maximize those types of situations. As well as, the termination provision. That's one of the most important things. The difficulty is I built this, I paid this money, they can terminate me easily. So those are the types of things that need to be negotiated if there's no additional statutory protections, because you can be in a situation where most franchisors, you buy the franchise, and then to the extent that it's a termination, you're still on the hook for what they call liquidated damages throughout the remainder of the term. So that's why it's so important to have someone like Haley to develop the franchise systems that have been operating effectively and that are fair, because otherwise you could be in a position where you enter into a franchise system that doesn't have the background, and it could be difficult, and they sell to a private equity firm that changes the entire game with respect to how you operate. So I think I provided a couple of points that I kind of wanted to highlight, but to the point of moving it on, it's so important if it's a retail-based franchise system to have a real estate broker or real estate professional that can help you, that has relationships with general contractors as well as with the landlord, so that you can put you in the position to get the best business terms as possible, to work with the franchise attorney also to make sure that it works for you. So I'll stop right there at this particular point. And thanks for the
good,
time.
Carl. You hit on a lot of key points. And the one thing you brought up, which is so important that people need to understand, franchise is a business model where, like Stephen Covey folks, you have to really think with the end in mind, because you're signing up for a term, whether it be 7 years, 5 years, 10 years. So you have to think about that as you building out your strategy up front. The ultimate goal, as we shared, is you want to stand that business up as fast as possible to get the profitability and to sustain it. But you also have to, like as Carl said, you got to stay compliant, and you also have to think about at the end of that term, what are you going to do? Are you going to renew it? Are you going to expand into other territories, as Chris did? Are you going to now branch off into other similar products or types of franchises, which Sean mentioned, Neighborly brand, you can extend into other franchise lanes. And so you want to be clear on whether those obligations are available to you when you sign that first franchise agreement. So as you continue to scale, you won't be surprised later on when they tell you what you can and cannot do in your agreement. So that's why it's important to always keep that franchise attorney, in your ecosystem as early in your process as possible. Right. Next, I want to bring on board Sonia Williamson. So the beauty of what Sonia will offer to you is that, and she'll share with you, is that she was one of those instrumental in helping us build out here the National Tanger Outlet National Arbor. And so in what she's done in this commercial development space, that she's always working with some of these businesses and helping them to remain, not only to stabilize and get them up and running, stand the business up, but sustain those businesses, because that's what's most important. Once we get these businesses into the communities, we want them business to be profitable and to service those communities. And so keep them sustainable. That's one of our most important tenets, because that helps to build out those local economic development, local communities. And so, Sonia, I want to hand it off to you. You can share out some of your experiences.
Thank you, Hallie, and thank you for having me on this presentation. I'm also a Terp, graduated from the Clark School of Engineering. I was there with Hallie years ago. We graduated in '91. And so since then, I've been working in the project management, construction management realm, and fell into the real estate development realm, where I actually work with the landlord that owned Tanger Mall and many malls around the Beltway in DC and all the way out as far as Loudoun County. When I was brought on board for the Peterson companies, I worked to help to build Tanger Mall, and we opened over 80 tenants in 8 months, basically building the building from the ground up. And I got 80 tenants in there in those 8 months. And so my expertise is construction management, but in development, when you have a building that's built, you want to get tenants in. And so understanding your role as a tenant and the landlord is important. But getting to that point, you have to go through the tenant fit out process. And that's what I want to share with you all today. So if you're having an idea to go into a retail space, then basically you have to find a space to be in. And in most cases, it's a shopping center, or it can be an office building or anything like that. And so it's not a difficult process, but you have to pay attention to the details. And that's where having someone on your team to help you with the legal side, to help you with the design side, to help you with the construction side is always important. In the franchise business, those organizations, the franchisor, can help you with that because they've done this at least once. Because as Hallie mentioned, the business has to be in the black. So they at least have some success somewhere, and they've gone through this process at least once. And so I want to share with you the 5 steps to becoming a tenant in a retail space. There is first the leasing, where you go in and you find something, you're interested in it, and you start that conversation with the landlord. You provide them with a letter of intent, and you see the space. You talk to them about, what is it going to take to get into this space? A lot of times when people come to me, they'll say, well, how much is the rent? That is a hard conversation to answer because during the leasing process, that everything is negotiable, everything. Step number two is the renovation. And that's where, I get my bread and butter. It's in the renovation side and I love it. And that, if you're not in the business of construction, it's not hard, but you got to pay attention to the details. I always tell my tenants that your focus is to allow your construction manager to manage that process for you while you're focusing on step three, which is grand opening. The grand opening is where you're going to get those cash registers ringing and you're going to start to pay back all the money that you've borrowed, you've you've taken out of your 401k, you've gotten some loans from your friends, or you've gone through the SBA process. After you get through that grand opening, then you're going to operate the business. The successful retailers or franchisors or tenants that I've seen, their focus is always on not day one, but day two. How do you get those clients or customers coming in and coming back so you can meet those needs? So that's step number four is the operation of your space. During that operation of your space, hopefully you will be very successful and you will renew your lease. And then you go through that process again of, negotiating your lease. You may do some renovations and you may have another grand opening just to spark some energy in your business again. But let's say you decide you want to expand and you're now going to move out. That is your step number 5 that you have to be prepared for when you're doing your tenant fit out. But let me go back to the leasing side and let's discuss that because that's your very first step. The leasing side, like I mentioned, everything is negotiable. And so I wanted to share with you a couple things that you should know when you're looking at a space. You have to know the current condition of that space. Is it a new build or was it used by a previous tenant? When you go and see that space, and I suggest you look at it several times in the morning, in the afternoon, during busy hours, during non-busy hours, so you can know what you're getting into. You need to know who's going to do what, who's going to build the space out, either you or the landlord. That will affect your lease rate, and your rent. Was it previously leased out? If so, who's going to remove the previous tenant stuff? Who's going to remove the previous tenant sign and materials and equipment? Is there any limit that's going to be placed on other tenants that are coming to that space, especially in smaller commercial shopping centers? You don't want to open a coffee shop and then your neighbor is also selling coffee. You want to know, will there be a limit on similar businesses coming into that shopping center, because you don't want to be in a space where you have competitors. But you also want to know, is there someone else there, another tenant that's there that you two can collaborate with? So if you're into nails, maybe there's a hairdresser that's close by and you two can collaborate and share clients. The next thing that I want you to know is who will do what? Who's going to build out the space? Who's going to, who you have to take advantage of. If the landlord is going to build out the space, then that may be a little bit more expensive, but it may get you in quicker. If you're going to build out the space, then maybe it's going to take you a little bit longer, but it may be a little bit less expensive. Who's going to be responsible for the common areas, the parking lot, the trash, the sidewalks, security, and so on? You want to know who's going to be responsible for that, because if you go into a retail space and there is no one there that's going to handle the sidewalks when it snows, you can negotiate that as part of your lease to say, well, if I'm going to do it, then maybe my lease rate should be a little bit less. So think about those things and know who will do what. Know some important dates. The important dates that you definitely should know is when the space will be turned over to you, because typically that is when your time is going to start to to get you to opening. You need to know when, if you're going to build out the space, when your permits need to be in hand. When do you need to finish construction? When do you need to open doors and start those cash registers to ring? When will your first rent payment be due? This one is really interesting because I've had people negotiate 6 months of free rent after they finish construction because they beat the grand opening date. And so that is something that you can negotiate in your lease. When will your rent increase? You need to know that date. So let me repeat that because that's, I think, next to what you're going to pay, those dates are so important. When will the space be turned over to you? When will your permits need to be in hand? That is if you're doing the construction. When will you finish? When will you need to finish construction? When will you need to open doors? Because when you're opening doors, if your lease is negotiated in a way that the landlord is getting some share of your income, you need to know those dates. When will your first rent be due? When will your rent increase? Know those important dates. And the last thing that I want to leave you with in looking at your lease is how long will your lease be and what will the renewal terms be? A lot of times you can get a lease for a year if you just want to do like a pop-up, meaning you're not going to change the space, you're not going to make any big construction changes. You might want to do a pop-up for a year. 3 years, you can have a 3-year lease, you can have a 5-year lease, or it could be longer. But at that point of renewal, you need to know what happens. Sometimes the landlord will require you to do a refresh, and you'll have to freshen up the space, maybe new paint, new signage, or things like that. You need to know that. And will certain restrictions be removed? If you're a new business, if they're not familiar with your franchise, they may set certain restrictions on you in that first term. And you want to know when you renew, will those restrictions be removed? And so I think that when you're looking at retail space to move into, it is very important that you know the condition that it's in. You know who will do what. You know your important dates, and you need to know how long your lease is, because it's not as simple as if you're moving into an apartment where you say, oh, I'm only paying $1,000, a month. It's all dependent on what you negotiate in your lease. So know those things. And so, Hallie, I'm gonna turn it back over to you because I see we're at the top of the hour.
Yeah, no, you hit key points, and because that's really the I say the challenge a lot of times when people are pivoting from corporate employee to entrepreneur is not understanding that things are done a little different in commercial. And so even the thought of negotiating an agreement, like, or having deferred payment on that first mortgage payment or lease payment, people don't even think about that as negotiating tool. You know what I mean? So that's why it's important to consult professionals as yourself or as Carlos, as the attorneys, to put those people in your ecosystem so that when you are negotiating, you are informed and you know what your options are available. Because in the end, you want to try to keep as much working capital as you can. You keep that business up and running and sustainable.
Absolutely. Keeping that cash flow, especially in the beginning. It's important to try to keep as much cash flow in your pocket. It's for your employees, your materials, your electricity. You can't operate a business in a retail space if you didn't pay your electricity. So
no, it's so true. And the fact that and I wanted to just make sure we're stressing this point is that all things that you've heard, especially with the last two panelists, is that we've been talking and we've been running. Allah has been very good with providing those technical skills in this entrepreneurial environment. And so everything that we shared out is transferable skills. Whether you're in ideation stage, you're creating a new business venture, or you're in franchising, everything they shared is transferable. It's things that you can apply. And more importantly, I want you guys to think about if you designing that business, Are you possibly thinking about one day scaling and you becoming a franchisor? You know, that's an option that you need to think about on the front end. Even if you are currently a franchisee, you can design a business that's complementary to what you're doing. You know what I mean? And so, or it can be a business that's a customer to the business that you're now formulating. So you really need to start to think about designing a business as well as the product service offerings, but understand that there are two different levels that you can use the same discovery process, discovery acquisition in that design of a business as well as in franchise. So we definitely want to challenge the folks who are on the call, because I know we have a very diverse crowd of students, faculty, alumni, entrepreneurs, and current business owners that are on the call today. So we want to definitely highlight that. So now I want to open up the questions. Ala, are you seeing other questions in the chat? I know we or you can share out some of the response that we had for those who may not be reviewing the chat.
I don't see any other questions. I see a compliment saying good tips. But right now, if anybody wants to submit questions, or you can also click on the button that says raise hand, and I can unmute your microphone so you can talk and ask your question that way. But just you can't do that anonymously, unfortunately. But let's see, there's
And Sonia highlighted some, like what we call now is the ecosystem economy, which is complementary businesses. I mean, you really have to think about who are the customer and what are different ways to service that same customer through different businesses. And that's one thing that we're definitely seeing in the franchise industry, you know.
And I think also one of the important things of having a well-known franchisor is they can help leverage you negotiate better lease terms, right? Because usually they're going to have a lease writer that requires a lot of these franchisors, so you can get tenant allowances as well. So it's a lot of opportunity out there to help reduce that operating. You just got to talk to the right people like your Sonia to put you in place, and just do not. It's not siloed here. This is an integrated process in which you need a team to make it successful.
Right. I agree. And, you know, a lot of times we don't move because we're afraid. And I always say it's the things that we accomplish are really simple, but you got to pay attention to the details. And if you don't understand construction or the legal side, you know, or if you want to talk to someone who's done it before, you just got to get out there and ask those questions. Yeah. And just so that the fear can be diminished and you won't make it as many mistakes as stopping you from doing, you know, from taking that leap.
Yeah, no, totally. I echo that, because that's the entrepreneur journey. You're gonna have to know how to manage your fear and manage your energy, because with the market as it is today, with it contracting, you know, and then hopefully, you know, stabilize these interest rates and it will expand again. Is that how do you sustain in the midst, you know? And so part of that is managing risk, you know, and best way to manage risk is get more information and expand your network. So I see a hand raised. Adam.
Yeah, we can allow Adam to talk. So go ahead, Adam.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Adam Haney. I'm a senior at the University of Maryland, and I am interested in creating or have interest in a business venture. So my question to you guys is for up-and-coming entrepreneurs that may have a similar business concept to ones that he's seen, whether it's local to College Park, to the DMV, but also, you know, across the U.S. For an entrepreneur, would it be better for somebody like myself to start my own business or to invest in a franchise that has already established itself?
Yeah, good question. And that's usually the first question, Adam, everyone have when they start the discovery process. And what I share with you is you really have to think about what's your level, what's your financial profile, what I call your profile. What's your business professional profile? You're a student. What are things you've done to get that business up and running? So the question becomes, is it something that you can start out independently, you know, build up, or are you interested in actually acquiring a business? And so if you talk about acquiring a business, that requires a financial, you know, outlay, you know, the initial franchise fee, stabilizing that business. They're going to ask how liquid you are so you can sustain that business for the first 36 months. So those are questions you have to ask. But if you've been on these different training sessions with Ala, we always push that you start as early as possible with your franchise discovery and testing that idea or business concept out in the market. You know what I mean? Like, test out what you're trying to do now in the market and see that there's a market for it. You know, and that's the whole customer discovery process. And as Sonia mentioned, with that's the purpose of pop-up stores. And that's one thing that we've been pushing in the community, is that you have an idea that you want to see if the market will buy that idea, because that's, in the end, that's the ultimate goal. And then if that idea is marketable, then you can assess whether to scale that idea. Will it be better to partner with a franchise, or will it be best to start out as an independent business? But that's what I definitely recommend you do. Build that business model canvas, get that business model out, test it into the market. You must want to add anything to provide guidance to Adam?
No, I think those great points. I think always contacting someone like a Hallie, because he understands the entire scope, in the sense of, even if you don't franchise, you still need to have franchise-like systems, no matter what, if you're an independent business or not. So when you start thinking about independent business, it's important to get a feel for, if I do this independently, how's your supply chain cost going to be? Usually that's going to be higher than what a franchisor. You got to worry about branding and things of that nature. But then again, you don't have all the fee structures associated with it. So now it's just working with someone like Hallie, getting a feel for your objectives and making an evaluation as to what may be better. And they're not mutually exclusive. One thing that I realized is, like, the last 10 years been game changer, because usually marketing was so expensive to market your brand. Now with social media, that changes the game. So it makes the question a lot more difficult to answer than it initially was.
And for me, when I actually went through that same process, we talked about marketing, how marketing is really the bane of your existence. That's kind of where you start. And so for us, because we're starting out brand new, our marketing dollars are actually through the roof right now, because we're so brand new. But the good thing is we have a brand behind us to help us get through that notoriety. Not having a brand makes it a little bit more difficult to get yourself out there, because there's so many other people out there in the space. And you have to do whatever you can do to make yourself a little bit more visible. And that's going to take some time to do. We're talking to a company called Local IQ that's helping us with our Google business profile. We're talking to the Yahoo folks. We're talking to Yelp. All those people that you have to engage, and that costs money. But the thing is, the fact that we do have a brand and a franchise makes that just a little bit easier, and it takes the stress off trying to establish yourself in a huge diaspora of other owners doing the exact same thing. Gives you a little bit more of a head start to kind of get to your financial goals that you're probably looking to attain. And I'm going to have to drop off. I'm sorry, Hallie, but I've got
no. Safe travel, Sean.
And I really appreciate this. Has been a great webinar. I'd love to do it again in the future if you guys have one.
Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you.
And let me just add, if
Chris.
you're trying to decide if you're going to go franchise or independent, start with that piece of paper folded in half and writing down the pros and cons of both. And, and also include in that where you think you need help, and what skill set you already have. And depending on that, that could be what helps you make the decision if you're going to go into the franchise world, or if you're going to go into the independent retailer world.
Yeah, to follow up on Sean's point too about the marketing piece, if you are looking at franchising, one of the things that you may also want to inquire in your discovery day is, what is your franchisor going to do to help you with your marketing? I know in my case, my franchisor does quite a bit of marketing across the U.S., which actually then filters back down to my stuff down that I'm able to do locally. So that is a benefit to me, where I do get some national brand marketing. I mean, same thing with if you were in Chick-fil-A or McDonald's or whatever, you got that, that's on TV, and you have that helping to bring business in for you.
Thank you. Thank you guys for all your responses. Thank you.
Good stuff.
Oh, sorry, just one more question. Sorry.
Okay.
I know somebody asked the question in the Q&A, but just for reference, because I already have 1,000 other follow-up questions to ask you guys. What is the best way to reach out to either of you guys regarding anything regarding franchising or pursuing an independent business?
Yeah, so you can reach out. I'll share my information. You can reach out to Ala, and then Hallie.Williams@rightnextdoor.biz. But definitely reach out to us, and I can put you in contact with anyone on the panel today.
And feel free to get in touch with me and I will introduce you to Hallie or reach out directly to Hallie.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. And for everyone on
Yeah,
the call, I just want to shout
a lot of you who are on the call, and what, you know, because I was answering a lot of those questions. Most of those questions, Hallie pointed right back to you. So you really want to get Hallie's information, and you can run a lot of those questions through him, and he's absolutely your first point of contact in your journey.
Mhm.
Yeah, contact and because one thing I just wanted, especially for folks, as I know a lot of folks in the different part of the entrepreneur journey on the call, is that not only can you start a business, acquire a franchise business, but there are also opportunities for you to become a vendor in the franchise community. And I always brag on the fact that in the DC area, we've been eating mumbo sauce forever. And so now to have a local entrepreneur, Henry Soul Cafe, as a supplier to mumbo sauce for McDonald's, that's huge. That's something that, most entrepreneurs don't think about. That's another play into the franchise space, being a vendor. So it's all types of opportunities that are available. So definitely, as you explore your entrepreneur journey, keep all available. And thanks, Chris. It was a lot of good questions in the Q&A that you answered. So appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. And Hallie, I shared your email address in the Q&A to the person who asked about it. So take a look there, or I'm happy to connect you.
Okay, good stuff. And the floor is open. Any other questions? Or anyone have any follow-ups from things that they heard during the call?
Yeah, we have about 10 minutes. So Adam, don't be shy if you have more questions. Or if anybody else has a question, please either raise your hand or submit it via Q&A.
So Hallie, let me just share in the quiet space right now.
Yes.
That question that I get all the time about what is my rent? The calculation for rent, it is actually the total amount of square feet times your unit rate, and that's your annual rent, your annual lease payment, and then they divide it by the month. So let's say it's $120,000 is your annual, because people are like, oh my God, it's $120,000. Well, they divide that by 12 so that they come up with your monthly. So to get to that number, to get to that unit rate, that's why I say everything is negotiable, from who's going to do what, who's going to pick the trash, who's going to do the construction, when you open, when your rent first starts to be due. Everything is negotiable. And when you get that square foot unit price, that is what you're negotiating. So, it's not difficult once you talk to experts.
Yes. All right, cool. No, that's good stuff, Sonia. That's so important, because that determines that territory. Where you decide to set up in that territory.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there are some shopping centers now, like the larger malls.
Yeah.
They have specials for people that are serving products. There are lots of people that are out there doing scented candles and artwork and books. A lot of the larger shopping centers now have these little kiosks that are actually giving away on a competition. So if you look at some of those spaces, if you have some of those products that you want to get out in the public, go to some of the large shopping centers in the area and see what they have going on with the kiosks that are out there.
That's a great way to test your market.
The other thing I'll point.
Yeah, go ahead.
The other thing I'll point out to you, and Sonia, you might have better insight on this, is depending upon your business, you want to get the right office space, right? So I believe, Sonia, keep me honest, I believe it's called a Class A, Class B, and Class C, right? So like for myself, I'm doing a window cleaning, right? I don't need a retail space. I don't need a storefront. Okay,
right. I
got a Class C space, and the rent is a lot less. I don't have a big fancy spot, right? but
Mhm.
I don't have a bunch of customers coming in, right?
Mhm.
I'm bringing service to the customer, right? And so that is, something to consider as well, depending on what your service or product is that you're providing, get the space that is right for you.
Yeah, the process is the same if you're in a shopping center, an industrial site, an office building. The process to get through the tenant fit out process is the same. And like Chris said, it may be cheaper. I had a client who did um, shea butters and things like that. He actually manufactured shea butters. And so his space was an industrial site, very cheap uh, square foot price, but he built out a little section that was very cute, and people could come in and actually buy from his location. But most of his products were sold online and shipped out. So you got to be creative and strategic if you're trying to do something and you're just trying to test it out.
Yeah. That was smart.
And fortunately, it's very easy with the franchise because in item 7, they'll dictate exactly what type of space you have, the specification, and what's the estimated square footage that you'll need to operate a business. So it's not like you got to find, it's going to be that's required to be disclosed.
Correct, correct. And a lot of times on the franchisees, they have a minimum space that you have to lease. So you have to meet those requirements on that side, then find a landlord that has a space on the other side of that equation. And you look at those things like, is there competing business there? You look at all those things. So it's not like you can just go out and say, oh, I want to go, to this shopping center. You have to make sure that it meets the requirements of the franchisor.
Mhm. Very true. Very true. Cool. We can wrap it up. Somebody do close out. So everybody, thanks again. Thanks for signing in. I had on the board. You keep talk takeaways from today discussion, which you guys have really asked some good questions in the chat. Go ahead, Ali. You wanna?
No, I was just
Okay.
actually trying to put the applause icon on my camera. I wanted to thank everyone. This is such a fantastic panel. Hallie, thank you so much for putting it all together. And Sonia, Carlos, and Chris and Sean, thank you so much for making the time and spending an hour and a half of your time with us. I know everybody's busy, but this has been extremely informative to hear from such a wide and diverse expert panel of experts. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
And again, we will post
Thank you.
on YouTube. And anybody who missed the session today, I know I already got a few emails saying I can't attend. Can you please send me a link? So we will post this on YouTube, and anybody can watch it again. And I posted information on how to reach Hallie Williams, or just send me an email and I'll connect you. Thank you so much again. And to everyone who kept the questions coming. All right, I'm gonna thank you so much.
Thank you.